Good evening. We are heading down the home stretch, and so that's pretty exciting to me, and I bet it's even more exciting to you. The first thing I want to talk about tonight is the Competency Folio. Now, the AAPTEL was actually supposed to be completed on 10/22, and we had all that storm terrible stuff. So we sort of extended it a week, so that's 10/29. It needs to have happened. And we had said that the folio should be done 10/26. And so that really should be done also. And I've only received task-free notification of competency work being done by fewer than this many. So, I really need them. And I did the math, and it comes out that I have 567 competency submissions with documentation to look at. And so I'm asking that you not wait until the last day, because this old woman can't read that fast. My brain works, but it doesn't work at high speed anymore. I have to say that for the last 3 days, I have worked full time, and I realized that I no longer could run the halls like I once did. I used to have as my goal to get around the quad 3 times in the 5-minute passing. And I was able to do that in high heel shoes. So now is not that time. I'm getting slower and slower. So you folks have just got to help me out and get my folio turned in so I can read it and help you get it so that you're proud of it. So now you go on, and I had given you a sheet called a competency record. And I think so often we get overwhelmed by pieces of paper. And there are some pieces of paper that are more valuable than others. But I would say that that's a pretty interesting piece of paper, because you can go through on that little piece of paper and record in just a couple of words what you did for each one of those. And on the back, or on the second page, whether you printed it front and back or page 1 and 2, there is a statement that says exactly how you are to do that submission. Okay. If you have not read that, I want you to read it. And if you've read it and you don't understand it, I want you to call me, email me, do something, so that when you put those in, you're putting them in correctly, because it's not a hard task. It's just tell how you did it. One major thing. This is not like the reflection where you talk about as many different ways that you communicated, for example. This is choosing one way that you did, that you demonstrated that competency in your work, in your internship. And you are writing that paragraph about how you did it. And you are, if there is a digital competency that you can link to that, it tells you exactly what to do. And I just am imploring you to write digital
Tillman,
and
can I ask you a question about one of those?
Yes.
Okay, for instance, one of them is caring, correct? Yeah. So could an example be like an email to a parent?
It could. So-and-so is in the hospital, or so-and-so's grandpa passed away, or we had a baby 3 hours away here and my son didn't get his homework done and he's afraid to come to school because he's going to disappoint you, and you write this nice little email back and say, it's all right, send it in, I'll give him a hug. Okay, That is exactly what you're looking for. Okay.
Okay.
So Sally was talking about an email. What if like we called a parent? Could we just log that, or
If you keep a log
okay?
of calls, counselors are really good about keeping logs, and I've had counselors to submit redacted logs showing what they did.
Well, we have to call every parent within the first 30 days of school and make positive phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
So I also have the log of where I made all those phone calls. I don't know which would be better, but I have either one.
Well, you just have to decide.
Okay. I just want to make sure that's something that I would be that I could do.
And I would say that would be, a good communication, for your open-ended, for example. That'd be a great open-ended. But it may not be the best one. You may put it in there and later on decide, oh, I like this better. Because remember, this is your professional self that you're saying, I can do these competencies to a high level, and here are 3 things that show it. Not I could just say I can prove I can. Right here is the proof. And that's the beauty of this. And that's why I keep saying, don't do it for me, do it for you. When you see
okay, so we can put one in, and then if we find something better, we can change it.
Well, I'm hoping you're not going to do too many of those, because I don't want to read more than 567 of them. But I would say, if something in the future comes up, you've got your communication ones done, and you feel like, oh my gosh, this came up and it's a beauty, and it's something that doesn't usually happen. It's a big opportunity I had, and I just want to put this in somewhere. Find the best place for it, write it up, and stick it in there. Okay.
Dr. Tillman, are we limited to 3?
You are not limited to 3, and that's another way of dealing with special things.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can always, in fact, you will all find that if you enter all of the requirements for all of these competencies, you will have more than 3 for each one. Because in the future, you may have one for the AAPTEL, the AAPTEL, and then you've got a good one for the open-ended, and 2 or 3 assignments on down the road, you go, oh my gosh, I really, or the professor says you need to do a communication. Well, your communication slots are all full, but you just add another. It'll take as many as you put in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that's good. But don't do a bunch of emails unless the emails are really special. Okay, like the caring thing, that's great. That's something different. It's a different side of you. It shows not only your professional, but your compassionate. Because we need compassionate people. You can be compassionate and not be wishy-washy. You can be very professional and be compassionate. Yeah, sort of a interesting line to walk. Okay, let's have questions about.
Dr. Tillman.
Yes.
I send postcards each week to my students. What would be better to post, a picture of the postcard I have sent, or the log where I logged it into my contact log?
I don't know either one, I guess. The one that you think is the smallest space with the most information. How about that? Okay. Because always, all along, we're trying to keep things compact, because there's somebody that's making some strange noise, and I'm not sure. Is that somebody in a car maybe, or if you're in a car, if you're on a car or a phone, if you would mute, please, because we're having trouble hearing. Okay. Nope, it's still happening. Okay, let's see. I hate to mute everybody because I like people talking.
Hello?
Yes.
I'm sorry, it might be me. I'm at basketball practice with my son. It's Miss Sheila Hall. I'm just gonna hang up because I don't know how to mute it and I'm on the phone. So I'm sorry.
You should be able to mute. Your cell phone will mute.
I don't see how to mute it.
Oh. Okay.
I'm on a meeting on the phone. I'm trying to mute it.
Okay.
Okay, I got it. I'm gonna mute it.
Great. All right. There you go. So questions about the competency folio?
Dr. Tillman.
Yes.
Sorry. Are you going to be taking any questions about the AAPTEL tonight?
We
Because
are, but
my
I
computer's going to die, and I just realized that my charger is at school. And would you just like me to like email you, or can I ask it now?
Well, you can ask it. Yeah, go ahead and ask it now, and we'll go back to the competency folio. Yes.
Okay, I'm really sorry. I've been trying to work on my needs assessment for task 2, and I'm kind of confused on what that's supposed to be. Are we just saying?
Oh, okay. So if it's that, Ms. Brown, why don't you, if you will email me, let's set up a time when we can Zoom just the two of us, and we'll get that straightened out. Okay.
Okay.
Could you do that, Jimmy, for me? Because you probably need.
It's a pretty simple question. You could probably answer it in an email, but I'll
so
see what you think.
Okay, because we just need to get that moving along. Okay.
Right.
But,
okay.
That would be just between you and I. Okay, and maybe we could. Let's see. We could do that Thursday evening. Could you do it tomorrow evening?
Sure.
Okay, so give me an email and we'll Zoom and get it worked out, and make sure you have the papers up and visible. And send me the latest thing you have, unless what I've already sent you.
I don't have anything. I have my gap analysis done, but I'm not sure how to do the needs assessment. I don't know if it's supposed to be me.
Okay, so we'll talk about that when you email. Okay.
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 Thank you.
Great. Okay, let's go back to the competency folio. What kind of questions do you have?
Dr. Tillman, one of the things that I had a question about was with respect to, I guess I thought the competencies were supposed to be relative to either the AAPTEL or the AAPTEL or our internship tied to our classwork. So I've been worried about anything that maybe was in my regular job as a teacher in my regular role not being something I could use.
It can be something in your regular role, but they would always end up being open-ended.
Okay.
And so, if you have good things going on, you get to do presentations at the central office, or somebody puts you on an interview team downtown, or you get to go represent we've got one of our people that was elected Teacher of the Year. These are the kinds of things that we want to find a way to stick them in there so that they're part of our professional presence.
Okay.
So that's a good question. Yeah. Other questions about competency work? Because I want to make sure everybody that is present knows what we're talking about when I talk about the format on the bottom of the second page of that competency record form I sent. If you don't have that, you need to go back and find it. I think I've sent it twice.
Dr. Tillman, I know I'm at basketball practice, so you might hear a lot of extra noise, but I started my competency folio, and I did put that little statement in there, but where I was confused at was like, one of mine, I said, it asked like the first parentheses where you have to fill in the type of correspondence you had, email, PowerPoint, or whatever. And then it was like, to to produce a product or something like that.
In other words,
is it okay to?
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. You go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, it would be like I used the digital competency. For this digital competency, I used the PowerPoint tool to produce a presentation for the school administration concerning student learning.
Okay, that's kind of what I did, but I put in like I use email, PowerPoint, and YouTube to host the intervention PO or set up the intervention POC meeting and record the minutes or something like that. I said
yes. What you're going to do is say the digital tool and what you did with it.
Okay.
And if it's two digital tools, well, I use this digital tool to produce this and this digital tool to produce that.
That was my question mainly because I had multiple things, just to make sure it was okay to put multiple things instead of, okay.
But you don't need to do a whole lot of inserts.
Right.
And make sure that the inserts are directly tied to the narrative.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be long. We're looking for quality.
Okay.
And, more is not better. Better is better. Okay.
Dr. Tillman, I noticed that when it says that you need to say something about a digital competency, that they're very specific about what the digital. So if we don't have something for that, so let's say for the AAPTEL, I didn't have anything for that specific competency that was digital. But I only have to have the digital competency for one of the three. Is that correct?
That's right. But the reason.
So it's okay if I don't have one for one of them because I've got two more that I can do. I just need to make sure eventually I get a digital competency in there. Is that right?
And that's why I'm having you underline, bold them, because when you are up at midnight trying to meet that final deadline in 6:05. It's going to be great to flip through there and see that you've got one bold, one bold, one bold, one bold, and you're out of there, rather than having to go back and read all of that to find if you have it. So I really, it sounds like at the beginning, I'm trying to just be an old fuss budget and tell you what to do. But I'm really trying to save you some midnight hours if you'll just listen. But anyway, that's the whole idea.
Okay, and I had one more question. I know that before we didn't fill in the competency folio on the AAPTEL until we were finished with the AAPTEL. Mm-hmm. Do you want us to go ahead and start working on the competency folio for the AAPTEL, or wait until we're finished with the AAPTEL?
It's probably better to wait till you're finished so that you get it out and get the AAPTEL out of the way and then do the competencies, because once you get the AAPTEL done, it's a lot easier to go back and pull stuff and just stick it in and get it done. And that's why I want you to do the AAPTEL ones as soon as you finish the AAPTEL, because it's closer in your mind and you can do it faster and really better. Yeah. Okay, good questions. Other questions? Because I'm not beating a dead horse, but I do want you to understand so you don't have to do these over, because you just don't have time. Okay, so we're ready to move on. Ms. Brown, did you have a question? You're muted, so I don't know. You're talking, but I'm not hearing you.
Did you say Brown or Burris?
I said Brown. I thought Ms. Brown was trying to say something. No?
No, I was talking to my husband for
Oh, well, I noticed that you were muted, and it looked like you were talking, and I thought, I don't know if you're talking to me, but I'm not hearing it.
Yeah, it's fine. He works third shift, so I was talking to him.
Oh, okay. That's quite fine. Okay, last call for competency questions.
I'm trying to enter the competency. I mean, everything is set up, but When I go to push work and submit work, it doesn't allow me to, it comes back out to where you have the apps on AAPTEL buttons.
You're in the wrong place, I think. Did you set up the competency folio?
Yes.
You followed the video and set it up?
Yes.
And you get to it through web pages and folios at the top banner. And when
so I click that, I set up my little folder, picked out the design or whatever you call it.
That sounds like you did the right thing. Okay, so when you go back in and you click on it, you should see the competencies down the left side.
What I see is, are you ready to submit your work?
Well, you should see, okay, are you ready to submit your work should be on down the line. I can't see what you see, but you're supposed to see the competencies. You click on the competency and then you fill in the information. And then,
Angelique, are you when you're, I know you set up your folio, but that's where you go back in to put your competencies.
Yeah.
So at the top where it says folios and web pages, you click on that, then click on your other thing, and then that's where they come up. That's where you put them in.
What other thing?
So it's click on folios and web pages. And then it should say at the bottom, or over on the left-hand side, whatever you named it.
Probably, and I think they said you maybe should do it add on cohort fall.
Yeah, that's first. You see, you go in there and then you go to folios and web pages, and then down at the bottom it should have, like mine says, Lori Heatherly's competency folio. That's what I named it.
Yeah, I named mine too, but I don't see that.
Okay, you may have to go in and do it again then.
Okay.
Because there should be, because your name, whatever you named it should be right there. Then you click there, and that's when all of the competencies come up on the left. You're trying to put it in the wrong place.
Okay, so Lori, I see where you're talking about. Now, where do I go after that? Like, I'm under change management.
Okay, so then you click on change management.
Okay, I got that.
And then go up to text and image.
Okay.
And then
you can actually click on any of those, like video, attachment, whichever kind of thing you want to upload.
Right, but if you're writing it for the first time, then you click on the text and image, put in your paragraph, and then whatever evidences you're going to show, you'll either click attachments or links or videos or whatever it's going to be.
Under that paragraph is where I put the line that Dr. Tillman's talking about.
Yeah, and then you put your first one, whatever it is you're going to do, and then you put another line to show that you're getting ready to show that there'll be one after that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I found my folder. It says A. Burris Competency Folio.
Okay, so you click on that.
Okay.
And then over on the left, you see.
Yeah, I see the
change management.
Yeah, I see all those stuff.
Okay, that's where you enter them.
And you click on the one you're interested in. Click on the top one, which is communication. Did you click on it?
Yes.
Okay, and so you should see where it says there should be one for the AAPTEL and one for the AAPTEL and one open-ended. You see that?
Oh, yeah, it says 3 evidences, AAPTEL, PSYOP.
Okay, and under that, it gives you a definition of what communication is. And under that is where I'll see the narrative, and under that is where you put your evidence.
Oh, yeah, I've already put I've already put 2 files in here.
Okay, you just forgot where you were.
Okay, so once I put the files in.
But I haven't received anything from.
Well, then when you're finished with them, you see at the top where it says comments?
Yeah.
All right, you have to click on that.
The top right, isn't that right? Top right?
have to request, and then you'll choose Dr. Tillman's name, and you have to request comments. And then that's when it goes to her, and she'll check them and make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
Oh, for each, I have to do that for each.
Well, if you can do them in a batch, so like if you sit down and do 5 or 6 of them at one time, when you click on it, you can click on all the ones you've done so far and send them as a batch.
Okay.
But don't send it as all of them, because then it'll say you've done all of them, and I have to go in all 21 to see which ones you really did.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to pick which ones you did. Yeah.
Just pick the one you did. Thanks, Siobhan.
All right.
So I was pulling mine up as you guys were talking. So when you're on there, and like one's like the first one is communication. So you'll just type, like we type what we did, we add however, like we're going to submit like to show evidence, and then we just put a line, because then the next time we'll just go underneath and add
under the line.
Okay.
Because if you're not careful, what happens is you end up typing your narrative for the next submission somewhere between the items that you attached, and before you know it, it's all mixed up and you can't find out what's happening to what. So I've discovered if you put a line, then you just look for the line and make sure you're under it, so that it ends up narrative attachments, narrative attachments. Because the evaluator, when it goes to Raleigh and they start spot checking, they don't want to find a narrative and then what you say is in the attachment, not in the attachment. You know, that's a red flag for sure. So no red flags, no red flags.
So you said after we type in whatever we're going to type in, put a line?
No, you type in, do you have the sheet that says competency record that I emailed to everyone?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. Look at the second page or the back if you did front and back. There is a format there. And it says that you do the narrative, and it tells you exactly what should be in the narrative. And it tells you about the digital competency, how to put that. And then it tells you to put your documentation that you talked about in the narrative. And then only when you're totally finished, you're going to draw a line so that we know that's all of that submission.
Okay.
So there's no question about where the submission ends. Because if everybody just did one attachment, it wouldn't get mixed up. But it gets mixed up when you do like 3 attachments, because you need 3 pieces of evidence to show what you're talking about. And then the next time you only need 1 piece. So you've got all this evidence out there. So you want to keep the evidence with the narrative that it goes with. And a line is the easiest way, or the easiest way I found. Okay.
Okay, I see. Draw a line to separate entries. 3 required, others may need to be added.
Yes. Okay. And when I say others may need to be added, it's because you may have 3 already and your professor is saying, I want you to do a communication one. Well, if your slots are full, go ahead and do another one, because you can do as many submissions in any competency as you choose. You can have more than 3. It's just 3 are required. Okay?
So where it says AAPTEL for either of these things, we have to do 3 of each for this semester.
You have to do 3, and if you'll look at that competency record sheet I have, it actually in small letters says exactly which of your projects you are required, and it'll say 1 open-ended. So you've got a space to record what you did, so you can remember, you know, what you've already submitted.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I feel good. We got that cleared up. Okay. So task, when we're looking at the AAPTEL, we're trying hard to stay on target with that. And I think we'll just talk about that. And then if anybody wants to stay on to talk about the AAPTEL, which is past news for most people, we can stay on to do that. What about as far as task 1 and 2? Are there questions about task 1 and 2 for the AAPTEL? Okay.
For the AAPTEL, we don't, for task 1, we don't have to have the, for task 1,
You're the research and the checklist.
Checklist, okay.
Okay, so we've got to have a good checklist in classroom and school-wide. And those things need to be very specific. We're not, it doesn't help us to say the teacher cares about all of her students. Well, it doesn't help us a whole lot. We need to be able to flesh that out. What does the research say should be happening in the classroom? So observable things.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody for task 2? Question about task 2. Okay, so we're on to task.
I had a question about task 1, the comment that you sent me back, Miss Dr. Tillman.
Yes.
I replied back to you because I forgot exactly what it was, and I'm at this practice and it's loud, and you probably can. It's probably more of a distraction than anything for everybody else. But I did email you back regarding the comment because some of the things you mentioned I thought were in there, so I was just kind of confused as to what exactly I needed to do. Because, like, I think one of the things where you said something about Marzano strategies, but I had Marzano. You said cite Marzano, but I had Marzano cited.
Well,
and so I didn't really.
I think you had him cited, but I don't think you had him cited with specifics.
You mean within the paper or just
within?
Like I had.
Go ahead, because I don't have your paper up, but the best I can remember, the people that cited Marzano, what you really needed to have cited was Marzano's 9 or his high yield strategies, or those things that said specifically what should be going on in a classroom that is a successful classroom.
Right. I dare cite something from one of his other, I forgot the name of it, but it's on my reference page, and it is about an effective classroom. And so I was just was kind of wanting more details about what exactly from Marzano I needed to cite, because I had some stuff from him in my paper, and it was, I have the PDF that I downloaded with the name of the book and all, but it was about effective teaching and then being in the classroom and all of that stuff, the strategies to use. But it wasn't the Marzano 9. I know what you're talking about with that, but it wasn't that specifically, but it was something else that was about an effective classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to know was there a specific thing you were looking for? Because I knew I had him.
It was Dr. Lamb that's looking for it, actually.
Okay.
But the thing is, he has been in so many different arenas in education, and what you need is something very specific, because if you talk in generalities, and he does that sometimes, if you talk in generalities, that's fine, except if you're doing a walkthrough, you want to have a specific list of things that you're looking for that are very specific, because you're going to have to analyze those things. And you don't want to have them, did I see it, did I not see it? You want to be able to have things that you can see and be able to document, because you've got to analyze all this data. That's why I'm concerned about people who have these long, drawn out, very well done, but massive data collection instruments, because you've got to analyze all that data once you collect it. So, you want to collect stuff that's going to be helpful and that's going to be something you can analyze readily. I hope that helps. Make sure it's specific.
Yes.
And some people did that with Whitaker. They mentioned Whitaker. They had a Whitaker and somebody in their resources and their references, but they didn't really zero in on anything in their lit review that ended up in their checklist. So that's sort of what I think might have happened in yours, but check that and see if that's correct. If you find that you have done that, then maybe it's this old lady was tired and she didn't remember seeing it. I'll say that might have happened.
I know that feeling all too well, Dr. Tillman.
Okay. So anything for 2?
I have a question about the needs assessment. I know that we're doing a gap analysis, which I'm assuming we're just going to talk about that we have a certain percentage of teachers that are not doing that. But is the needs assessment is that just recognizing that there is a need there, or is that going ahead and starting the action plan of what you're going to do?
That's, well, not what you're going to do, but it's, if you have your checklist and you have how many teachers did this, you've got, I saw it, I didn't see it, I didn't see it, I saw it, I saw it, I saw it. And you're going to tabulate all of that. And then probably the easiest way to show it is in a bar graph. So you're showing what happened. And remember, you're doing this in those 5 areas. So when you do the area, try to make sure that you're looking at the data in one of those areas and analyze that data and talk about it. Remember, you've got to have a narrative, then you've got to show the graph. Narrative, graph, narrative, graph, 5 times because you've got 5 things. Okay, so once you get the data, you then have the data analysis then shows you, here are the problems. Maybe you have 2 or 3 problems, but somewhere in there it says you prioritize. So the most pressing one is possibly the one that you're going to carry to your action plan. In other words, just like you said last time, we had these problems, but we think if we work with African American males, we'll get the biggest bang for the buck. Or we want to look at these ESL students, or we want to, what group is it or what topic is it? Well, in this, it's the same thing. What prioritized thing in this group, this first group, are we going to think is probably the most pressing problem?
Okay, and I don't have all of my data in yet, and I'm just asking hypothetically,
Yeah.
what if in one of those areas it doesn't seem like we have a need?
Okay, you'll just show that. I had a school last semester that, and I just love, I have visited the school a lot because I really like this school. It's a special needs school, and they have high-risk kids, and most of the things from a survey that they did, I specifically remember, 95% was the lowest percentage that they had. Their teachers loved working there. The parents loved their kids being there. It is a happy place to be. And so they said that in a couple of areas. We are struggling to maintain our 97% agreement on this particular item. And it went through with flying colors because right there it is on the graph,
Okay.
25 teachers that said this, or, I observed that in 25 of the 27 observations I did. This is not a problem,
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. You can't just say there weren't any. You have to prove there weren't any, but it's easy to do with the data you have. Okay. All right. So are we to 3? Anybody else with 2? Okay. So when you do 3, the rubric really is repetitive. And it sort of reminds me of doing a dissertation. You do 5 chapters, and every chapter seems to be saying the same thing. And you go, do I have to say that one more time? And your committee says, yes, say it in different words. Okay, so that's sort of the way this is. The first thing that seems to be needed in the empowerment and leadership one is you have to talk about the process of forming of the PLC Foundation, because that's one of the things it says. That this is the first task in this project where you have to use other people. So you've got to talk about that, the process that you went through in forming. And it says that you need to review, I mean, it doesn't say this, it doesn't say review the process, but it says you're supposed to talk about the best practices and the visual checklist and the gap analysis. And you're going, I just did that in 1 and 2. Well, you're right. But this asks you to do that, and you don't have to go back and do a full-blown report, but you do need to summarize what you've done so far. The best practices, the visual checklist, and the gap analysis. Okay, do a summary, and I would include the key graphs or charts. And with stuff like this, in most cases, a bar graph is going to get you where you want to be. And you can do several different topics. In other words, if you have, in one of those areas, if you have, say, 4 or 5 different best practices, you could have a graph about that particular focus area and show your bar graph of observed and not observed in 5 or 6 different areas, and just use one graph to show your data. Does that come through? And that is just as powerful as stringing it out and putting 5 graphs about this one focus area, because you're doing a graph for each one of the questions or each one of the practices.
So does that mean that you just have a longer narrative before you show the graph, since you're showing it all in one?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And you do a paragraph for each one. Get used to organizing so that the evaluator can see, okay, here's the main idea, here's the main topic, this is the focus, and here are paragraphs about each of the best practices that they, that they looked at, that was on the checklist. And then here's the bar graph that shows, here's these 5 things that I looked at in this, okay? So I think in some especially, you'll be able to do one bar graph to represent a lot of data. And that's fine. That doesn't mean you're trying to short circuit anything. It's just showing that you're doing a good job. You're organizing. And most of that will be in the school-wide stuff. The school-wide stuff is easier to graph, I think, because the in-classroom stuff, some of you are organizing it in different ways, so it's hard to talk to you about it, but make sure that you use as many graphs as you need, as many charts as you need, or whatever. But if you can organize it so that you can put more data on one chart, that's perfectly fine. That's fine. Just make sure it's narrative and then your graph, and then the narrative and the graph, okay? Because the more organized that part is, the easier it is to translate to the growth plan later on. And I hope you saw that in the student learning one, because if you were well organized going into that, you were able to construct the growth plan easier. And hopefully by the time you get through project 4, it'll just be like falling off a log. You'll just go, oh, here's another one of those. I know what to do with that. Okay. So we've got that little synopsis, the summary, and you've given them some data so they can see that you really know what you're talking about. Then you want to, just like before, give them a paragraph introducing the process, where you're talking about the process that you went through in collecting the information. Just use that as the intro. You're introducing the process, and then you're doing that review, and then you're ready to do the growth plan. And remember, you're going to have a digital representation with multiple graphics, it says, and using presentation tools. So all those graphs that you're pulling in there, those are the graphs that are going to end up in your presentation eventually. Okay, so the growth plan. There's a whole bunch of stuff that it has listed. First of all, it says a vision for positive school environment. Now, think about how your growth plan the last project, how it looked. Some of you put the goals at the top and then filled in the activities and that kind of stuff. This might be something that you could do the same way. You might be able to put the vision sort of in the first bar so that you get that out of the way. It says the vision for positive school environment. So what is the vision? Now that you've done all this research on empowering teachers and into leadership. Okay. When it says documentation of needs, how many needs do we need to address? How many needs do we need to address? Thank you. 5. We should have 5 needs. Now, we just got through saying a while ago that we might not need that. But everybody needs to think about the fact that they need to address 5 areas. If you can wimp out one by saying we're so good we can't do anything except try to maintain this glorious status, that's fine. But you need to address it. There needs to be, the evaluator needs to see 5 things addressed, okay? So, the documentation of your needs. A list of the indicators of success. Does this sound like last time's growth plan? Think about these things. Short and long-term goals, activities to address goals, specific timelines, specific roles and responsibilities, formative and summative assessment. Do those things sound familiar? Yes. And I keep saying, when you get into 605, you're going to have to put all of this stuff together into an action plan.
Yeah, that's an action.
And so all of those headings are probably going to have to be there, because in your school action plan, I think they all follow the same format. I mean, each school has its own format, but everything in the action plan follows a like format. So that's what we're trying to do. Some of these use some headings more than others. But remember, you're addressing all 5 of those areas. And so just like if you had more than one strategy last time, you might have said you wanted to address ESL students and African American males. Okay, so you had 2 broad areas, and then under that you had activities for each area. Okay, this is different in that you have 5 areas. So probably the easiest way to do it is take it area by area. And remember, you have to have a narrative supported by graphics. Okay, so you're going to go through just like you did before. Once you have the needs, you're going to decide what to do about those, and you're going to put that activity, and you're just going to go right on across. The biggest problem that I see with action plans tends to be that you write something and it doesn't go across. It's like, here's the activity, but up here's the timeline for it, and then somehow the spacing is such that you can't follow it across the columns and see what happens with that activity. It should be the activity. You should be able to read right across and see when it's going to happen. And please don't put January to May of 2019. If you're saying you're going to do professional development about something, and then you're going to implement it, and then you're going to do monitoring, and then you're going to do benchmarks, and you're going to do summative, that all of that is about that same activity, and it should go across the line, and you should be able to see, here's the professional development, this is when we're going to have it. Well, when are we going to have it? Well, it's probably going to be either little snippets after school, or it's going to be department meetings, or it's going to be maybe the next professional development day. It's going to be a half day. I don't know when it's going to be, but you need a time for it. Because if you don't say a time for it, the whole world knows it's really not going to happen. If you say it's going to happen sometime between January and May, with all the other stuff going on in your school, it's probably never going to happen. So lock it down. Here's when we want to have it, and here's who's going to do it, and this is what we need in order to do it. And, you know, here are the resources. Here's how we're going to monitor it. And, you know, just write on across, and then go to
this is just a recommendation. Like, our principal may or may not follow through with it. This is just us saying, here's what we recommend.
Yes. This is the plan. You are laying forth a plan of what you would do if you were in charge. And then once you get the plan, and the more organized the plan is, the more doable it looks. It is not doable to say, we're going to do this professional development, and then we're going to initiate this sometime between January and May, and then we're going to monitor, and sometime between now and May. That's not going to happen. But if you lay it out where you can see, here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to monitor it, here's our expected goal, it's much more doable. And when you present it to teachers, teachers realize, oh, this is a real plan. Somebody's put a lot of time in this. They really think we're going to do it. Oh, that Ms. Heatherly, she's going to be coming around, and she's going to be expecting me to be doing it. I need to get my buns in gear and get working on this, you know.
So if we're recommending a professional development on something, then we need to find a person that offers that kind of professional development and provide that name. And get that detailed?
Yes, or you might ask the principal. Don't call people at the central office without the principal's opinion, permission. Now, I'm just telling you, that's just sort of one of those line staff things. Ask your principal, would you mind if I called Miss So-and-so, who is in charge of professional development, or the person who's in charge of, you know, whatever it is you're talking about, to see if they would come and do a half-day professional development with our teachers, because that probably means it wouldn't cost anything if that person did it. And get the principal's permission before you call and ask Miss So-and-so to come and share her expertise. And then when you call Miss So-and-so, say, I've talked with the principal, and the principal thinks it would be great if you could come and do this. Now, he may not have said that, but he did give you permission to do it, and you think it was great, and that seemed to be what you agreed with the principal. So, you know, that sounds good on both sides of that. The principal's happy because you ask, and this person's happy because the principal thinks they want them to come out. And so
that would occur after the presentation of the plan, when he makes a determination, when the principal makes a determination as to whether or not he's going to follow up on any of them.
Well, I believe while I was doing it, I would just say, you know, I've been thinking about this, and I'm just wondering, I was trying to put a plan together here, and, you know, I'd like to see if this would be possible. If they say no, well, then you can't do it. There's no need to put it in your plan. If you talk to this person and they say, my schedule's already full for all those in-service days, I can't come, I can come next year. So, you know, you've got that 5 things you're working on. Maybe that thing you're going to be working on next year, because you can get some professional development then. See, all this doesn't have to start like PDQ. If you've got a reason, and the reason is obvious on the plan, you're good to go. Okay? But you just want to make sure you do that line staff thing, and don't call people at the central office, because some people get really upset about that. Some people really don't care, but other people care. So just assume everybody cares.
Our timeline could be, you know, next year at the beginning of school, one of the work days.
And actually,
and that would be when I would want to have this person come in and talk to the staff and
right,
all that kind of thing. Okay.
And you can also have summer kinds of things, because if you're doing something with your, say, your school improvement team, then, you know, you could have them, they have meetings in the summer sometimes. So it depends on when the good time is. If it's something that some counties or some districts have little mini grants that they give, and maybe you want to write a mini grant to ask for professional development funds to do one of these things. And you're making your plan based on the fact that this is going to be approved. Well, if it's not approved, well, you'll have to kick that can down the road and try again. But, you know, this is the plan, the most meaningful plan you can put together. Okay, but the specifics are really important to planning. You know yourself, you go to a workshop and they hand you an inch thick of really good activities, and you take them home and you go, I'm going to read through that, but I don't have time right now. And it goes on a stack, and then from the stack it goes filed away. And next year you're going, you know, I went to that workshop and where in the world is that? And it's lost. So we really need to plan really carefully about how we do that. Okay, now there was something that it says needs to be part of this growth plan that said, plan to communicate progress with vital stakeholders. And I think that should be, it can be in your plan, but I think there again, it's one of those broad, if you're going to actually have it physically in the plan, it needs to be in one of those broad heading footers that goes all the way across the bottom of your plan, to just say, plan to communicate with stakeholders, and write just a short paragraph there. And when I say short paragraph, I mean 2 or 3 sentences about what are you going to do to get all the stakeholders up to date about where you stand. You know, if you're training the department chairs, and then they're going to train their people, you want to make sure that the people who are going to get trained second know that it's in the works. The department heads are being trained and they're going to be training you. Okay. So it's just saying how you're going to do this, how you're going to keep everybody on board. That's basically what that is. The other thing says a plan for stakeholder involvement. Well, how are you going to involve the stakeholders? And that's a question you have to answer in your school. And it doesn't have to be long. But I think, again, it's one of those things, if you want it to be a part of the plan, it can just be in a footer in a row that goes all the way across the bottom. And a couple of people told me last time that they didn't know how to make that. If they had columns and then they wanted something to go all the way across, what you do is just make another row, and then you highlight all the columns in that row, go up to the table and say merge cells, and you'll get a row. You'll get all the way across. And I had people that weren't sure about how to do that. So make sure it looks good in a table to do that sometimes. And it gives you some flexibility too. Okay, so that's what I know about that. And it says that you also are supposed to talk about opportunities for teacher and staff to assume leadership and efficacy and implementing the PLCs, you know, that list of things that it says you need to have. After you present the graph of the plan, in other words, you've got the narrative, you've got the graphic, then I would just go down and just like you did with the last thing where you had to talk about doing your presentation, and then you were supposed to talk about efficacy and those 4 or 5 topics. This is the same thing. Just go under the plan and say, this growth plan provides for school improvement or for teacher empowerment and leadership in several ways. And then just do a highlight, a header and a paragraph about each of those things. And the things are opportunities for staff to answer leadership and decision-making, efficacy, implementing PLCs, supporting emerging leaders. There's a couple more. So those are in your rubric. Just pull those out of the rubric and make sure you address them. They don't have to be long, but just think about, after all the things that you have in your plan, how do those things address those issues? And I think there's, I'm trying to decide how many. There are 1, 2, 3, 4. There are actually 5 of those. So you're going to address, and it's nothing new. It's nothing more creative. It's just thinking about implementing this plan. How does implementing this plan develop those 5 things in your school? And they don't have to be long. You'll find if you can write powerful sentences, you don't have to write many of them. If your sentences are all watered down and general, you have to do a lot of that BSing before it adds up to much. So it doesn't have to be long. Now, it says that the difference between being proficient and being accomplished is a video. And it's a video of your presentation. So that's pretty clear. Okay. Now, what kind of a can of worms did that all open up? Questions? The big thing is read the rubric, make sure you outline based on the rubric. And I'll just say that over and over. If you'll just outline what you're supposed to do and then go back and fill in the outline, life will be good. Okay. Questions? I have a question. My computer keeps telling me that my disk is almost full, and I don't want to buy an exterior disk. And I don't have time to go back and dump stuff, and I don't want to dump papers. I've got people's papers from I don't know how long ago, but I don't want to dump them. It tells me to optimize my storage, and every time I see it, I click it off, and so it goes away for a little bit. Okay, questions? All right. Everybody is tired. They've been working so hard. Any questions?
It's hard to ask questions about task 3 when you haven't quite finished task 2.
Okay. Well, I think, though, it's always good to see what's coming, because if you see what's coming, it makes what you're doing more important, because you realize the specificity now will result in better organization later. And I'll just tell you, organization is, if you're not an organized person, you need to really work on it, because you're going to have more stuff to organize than you can ever imagine. They called me the notebook queen, because my life was in notebooks. I could keep up with notebooks. I file folders. I was okay with file folders for a while, but after a while it got to be notebooks. So just find your way to organize and just do it. Because I think that's what happens. People fall apart because they don't know what stack it's in, and then the date gets by. Yeah. Okay. I think if we don't have any more questions, if you have a question, you can always email me and I'll try to answer it. Okay, I'm going to shut it down. Let's see, stop.